Hello, Andy Reynolds, livemusicbusiness.com here, and today I'm going to help you to make an input list and a stage plan. So imagine you are playing a show and this is your backline, and before the show or as you load into show, the house sound engineer says, what have you got? And you say, well, we've got bass guitar and drums and vocals and keyboards, which is correct, but the house sound engineer will want to know what individual sources each element on stage comprises so that she can plug them into her mixing desk. And in order to do that, she will need an input list. So an input list is just a list of all the sources on stage. So if we take our drum kit, for instance, we've got our kick drum, which will be one source, one channel on the input list. We've got our snare drum, which will be another channel. We've got our rack toms, we've got a floor tom, we've got cymbals, we've got hi-hats, etc., etc. So at a very basic level, for our input list for the drums, for instance, we would have channel 1, which would be our kick, channel 2, which would be our snare, channel 3, now we might put just one microphone on the 2 rack toms, channel 4 would be our floor tom, and so on and so forth. So we list the instruments for the drum kit, for instance, in that order, and then we carry on looking at all the sources that we've got on stage and identifying which parts of them need introducing into the sound system. So for instance, we would have our bass guitar, and in a small club we'd probably just go with a DI, which may be the guitar plugged into a DI box or a DI out on the bass amplifier head itself. We may also go for a microphone on this, in which case there will be a separate channel which would say bass mic, but we're not going to go to a bass mic in this instant. Then we're moving on to our guitars. Now we've got 2 guitars. Which one is which? Well, we tend to name things on stage and for our input list according to their position on stage, and in this case it would be stage right and stage left, and this relates to the physical position of instruments on stage from our point of view on stage looking at the audience. So we're standing on stage, this is the audience here, this is our right hand side, so this is stage right and this is stage left. So looking at our stage setup, this is our stage right guitar and this is our stage left guitar, and that's what our input list will say. Stage right, stage left, and so on for any item that happens to be on stage relative to us standing on stage looking at the audience. And so we carry on adding all the sources that we have on stage into this list so that we can give it to the house engineer so that she can plug everything up into the house sound system. And as you can see here, we've added keyboards. I've got a DI on the keyboards. We've added a lead vocal, and it's usually that the lead vocal will be in the center, so we can, instead of writing lead vocal, we could, if the vocal is in the center, just put that symbol there. And we've also got a backing vocal, and again that's stage left, and vocal is often shortened to vox. So that is a very basic input list that we would give to the house engineer, telling her exactly what we've got and what needs to be mic'd up and plugged in. As you become more experienced at making an input list, or you have more time beforehand, you'll end up producing a document like this, which is a professional looking input list. Exactly the same as before. I've gone around the rehearsal room beforehand and looked and seen exactly what sources I need miking up or plugging into the PA. So I've got my sources listed here with all the various instruments. I've got some notes about what microphones I might prefer, plus my stands and some notes as to where things are. For instance, I'm telling the house sound engineer that in this occasion those 2 microphones are actually on the same guitar cabinet. Also obviously indicated the name of the band, and very importantly I've indicated when this input list is relevant. If you're doing a lot of touring or a lot of shows, you may be playing shows with different lineups, or you may be changing instrumentation just for a stripped down acoustic show, so obviously you're not going to send out the input list for the full on rock band that you usually tour with. So I've indicated when the input list expires, and this is good industry practice. So that's basically your input list. You'll then want to create a stage plan. A stage plan is a plot that shows exactly where instruments should live on stage so the house engineer can plug up everything in the right order, working off her input list. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. All you need to indicate is where things live on stage, usually. So going back to our original band, you could indicate that this section here is the drums and the channels accordingly. So channels 1 to 4, and a little note is our drums. That's all it needs to be. You don't need pretty pictures of stick men. We've got our bass, and that was channel 5. Stage right guitar, which was channel 6. Our stage left guitar, channel 7, and so on and so forth. And here is a professional stage plan for the input that goes with the input list we've seen previously. And as you can see, it just very clearly shows where everything is on stage, what numbers relate to the numbers on the input list, and so the house engineer can plug everything up and make sure it works before we start to sound check.